and welcome to a deep dive into early intervention. I'm Kyla Patterson, and I'm Virginia's Early Intervention Program Manager. Virginia's Early Intervention Program, which serves infants and toddlers birth to 2 who have delays or disabilities and their families, is called the Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia. You might also hear someone call it the Part C program or the Part C system. And Part C just refers to the part of the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, that gives us the rules and regulations that tell states what they need to follow when they have an early intervention program. The Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, or DBHDS, is the state lead agency that's in charge of early intervention in Virginia. So as we think in general about what early intervention is and what we're trying to do with early intervention services, our mission is really around building upon and providing supports and services that assist family members and caregivers to enhance their own child's learning and development through everyday routines and learning opportunities. And the purpose is it's twofold. First, to enable the young child to be an active and successful participant during their early childhood years and also in future years in a variety of settings. So thinking about how they can be active and successful participants in their homes with their families, in childcare or preschool or school programs, and in the community. And the second part of the purpose is making sure that families have what they need to provide care for their child and the resources they need to participate in their own desired family and community activities. We'll talk about these key principles over time in this presentation as we talk a little bit more about the details of early intervention services. But really the key takeaways are that early intervention services are directed at helping families and other caregivers help the child develop and learn within their everyday routines and activities, because we know that that's when, where, and how children learn best. And so early intervention is not about going to a classroom or a school. Early intervention happens in families' homes, in childcare settings, but also at the grocery store or the playground or McDonald's, the kinds of places that are important to the family to be able to participate and go with their child. In Virginia, early intervention is delivered through 40 local programs, and every city and county in Virginia is covered by one of these local programs. So now that we talked a little bit about the general overview of early intervention, we can dive into some of the specifics. And I thought it might be helpful to start with who's eligible for early intervention in Virginia. I mentioned before that the Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia serves children birth through age 2 with developmental delays or disabilities and their families. So to be eligible, a child needs to meet one or more of these 3 categories of eligibility. The first is developmental delay. And here we're talking about a 25% or more delay in one or more areas of development. When I say areas of development, I mean things like physical development, which is how children use their big and small muscles, language and communication development, cognitive development or thinking skills, adaptive development, which is really around self-help skills like eating and dressing, and then social emotional development. So there may be a delay in one or more of those areas that makes a child eligible. Another category is that a child may be showing atypical development, even if they don't have that level of delay. And so some examples would be there could be Differences in the child's muscle tone. Maybe the muscles are more rigid or looser than is typically seen. Maybe there are differences or restrictions in the child's range of motion, the way that they can move their arms and legs or bend their bodies. Sometimes it's about the quality of a skill or a movement pattern. So they may be able to do it, but the way that they are doing it is not the typical way that we would see it happen. There could be atypical social emotional development or behaviors, or a combination of those kinds of things. And then the final category is a diagnosed condition. So the child might have a diagnosed physical or mental health condition that has a high chance of resulting in developmental delay, even if that delay is not yet showing. That child would be automatically eligible. Some of the things that might fall into this category would be Down syndrome or autism, a vision or a hearing loss, or a child who was born prematurely. So let's talk a little bit about how to get connected to early intervention. And really, as a parent or a family member, you know your child best, and you can make a referral yourself for your own child. You do not have to wait to have your child's doctor or someone else do it for you, or even agree that with your concern, right? So if you have questions or concerns about your child's development, go ahead and make a referral. There's no cost to you to have your child evaluated to see if they're eligible for early intervention. And if there is a delay or a diagnosed condition, then the earlier you get started with early intervention, the better. Now, I will say others can make referrals too. So your pediatrician could make a referral, or someone from your child care center, or other agencies or programs that you may interact with in the community. They can make a referral also. But I want to make sure you know that you don't have to wait for someone else, that you can make your own referral. And there are a couple of ways to do that. You can make an online referral, fill out some information online, and it will go automatically to the program that covers your city or county from that map we just looked at a minute ago. Or you can make a phone call directly to your local program. And you can find information for either of those ways of making a referral by going to our website at the link that's on the screen, itcva.online. And there's a button in the upper right corner that says referral. You'll click that, and there you can find a link that you can make that online referral. Or there's a list of cities and counties, and if you click on yours, it will pop up the phone number for the program in your area. So what happens after you make a referral or someone else makes a referral for your child for early intervention? The first step really is that eligibility determination. You'll get a phone call from someone in your local program, and they'll probably set up a time to come out and do what's called an intake visit, which is a chance for you to ask them questions and for them to gather some information from you that will help them determine whether your child meets one of those 3 eligibility criteria. One of the things that's important to know is that after you're referred, each of these steps that I'm going to talk about, you'll be given advance notice about what the next step is, and we'll need to get your consent, your written consent, in order to go to the next step. So you don't have to worry that somebody's going to move on without you knowing what's going on. We work really hard to make sure that we're giving prior notice and getting your written consent. If your child is found eligible, the next step is called an assessment or assessment for service planning, where there's a more in-depth look at your child's development across those developmental areas that I talked about just a little bit ago. And it's also a chance for us to ask the family about what their concerns are, what their priorities are, any resources they might already be connected with. And that happens in a team, what's called a multidisciplinary team, meaning there are professionals from multiple areas of expertise, and the family, the parents, right, are equal team members. And so that's a lot of conversation and an opportunity for families to share what they see at home and in other places, and for those professionals to also make their observations on how the child is doing in those areas of development. The information from that assessment is then used to develop an individualized family service plan, or IFSP. So the assessment information gets summarized in that plan, and then the team, again, including the family, talk about what are the big outcomes or the big goals that you as a family have for your child in participating in early intervention. What would you like to see them develop with some help from early intervention? And then you'll talk about what are the services that are going to be necessary to help achieve those outcomes. All families in early intervention receive service coordination. Sometimes you might hear it called case management or care coordination. They're all a similar service. We typically call it service coordination in early intervention. But this is the person who helps families move through and understand all those steps in the early intervention process that I just outlined on the previous slide. And then once that IFSP is developed and the services are identified and the family's given consent that they'd like to receive those services, the service coordinator is really there to help monitor that service delivery, coordinate and make sure that those services are happening the way that they're supposed to. They're kind of a primary contact for you as the family, as well as other providers who might be working with your family. It's part of their job to make sure you're informed of and understand your rights under the early intervention law, and then to help you plan for what's going to come next after early intervention. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. So in addition to service coordination, children and families in early intervention are entitled to receive other services that might be necessary to meet the outcomes on their IFSP, as I mentioned. And this is a list of the kinds of services that could be included based on your individual child and family's needs and preferences, priorities, those sorts of things. The most common services that we see children receiving are speech language pathology or speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and developmental services. As I said before, you know your child better than anyone else. So who better to help your child develop and grow? Mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, grandparents, friends and neighbors, child care providers. Children learn best from the people they're with the most often and in the places where they spend time, where they typically spend their time. And so for that reason, families really are at the heart of early intervention and service delivery in early intervention. And our goal, like I've said before, is really to support you and the other caregivers in your child's life as you learn strategies to use with your child to support their development during everyday routines and activities. One of the things that I think is really important to think about is that if an early intervention provider came to your home and worked directly just with your child, maybe an hour a week, your child's getting an hour a week to practice a new skill. Whereas if our main focus is helping you as a parent or other caregivers in your child's life know about those strategies, and we can fit those into the things you're already doing every day, then your child's getting hours and hours of practice, right, every day and every week to acquire those new skills. And so the approach we use and it is called coaching, right? And so we're really there to support you as you support your child's learning and development. And what that might look like in a visit is that the provider is going to start off by, if this is, ongoing service delivery and not your first visit, they're going to ask you how things have been going since the last time they saw you, what kinds of things you've been trying with your child and how that's been going, and then talk about what you want to focus on during today's visit. During that visit, the provider is going to be sort of watching you and your child interact and play during your everyday routines and activities. They might show you some strategies to use, give you a chance to practice it and try it so you can do problem solving together. They can answer your questions and they can make sure that you're feeling comfortable with using that new strategy. And then figuring out together what the plan is for between visits. What strategies are you going to try during what parts of your day, and making sure you have the information you need to use those new strategies to build skills. Families often wonder about paying for early intervention services. So I wanted to share that there are certain services that have to be provided at no cost to families, and this applies to all families. So service coordination, that determination of whether your child's eligible, the assessment, and the development of the individualized family service plan are all services that are free to families. There is no cost to you. Other services that might be listed on a child's IFSP do have a cost or a charge associated with them, but there are a number of ways to pay for those services. The first is that if the child is covered by Medicaid, Medicaid covers all of the early intervention services, and there would be no charge to the family. If the child is covered by private insurance or TRICARE, then we'll bill those insurances for services that are reimbursable, and they may pay all or part of a service charge. For any other part that's left over, whether it's a service that's not covered by insurance, it's a copay or a deductible from insurance, or maybe a family does not have insurance coverage for the child, there are family fees, but those are based on a sliding fee scale. So we use family size and income to determine a maximum that a family would pay per month. And that's how we make sure that no child and family are denied services based on an inability to pay. And then finally, there will come a time when the child is no longer eligible for early intervention. Children become ineligible as of their third birthday. And so another thing that we pay attention to is transition and thinking about what comes next for the child and the family. Some children catch up developmentally well before their third birthday and are moving on for that reason. Others, as they get older, may still need some extra help. Some, reach age 3 and are very close to having caught up and are moving on with no additional services. But for those who may need some additional special services, those can be provided by community agencies, by private providers, and sometimes through special education services, preschool special education services through the local school divisions. So your service coordinator is going to help your family as you're approaching this transition time, to understand what the options are and to make plans that fit with what your family would like for your child. That planning process starts at least 90 days ahead of time and up to 9 months ahead of that transition time. And that includes a transition plan in your IFSP, in your individualized family service plan. It can include making referrals for preschool special education services or to other community programs if you would like that assistance. And the service coordinator can also arrange a conference, a meeting between you, the service coordinator from early intervention, and the local school division or other community programs to help with that transition planning as well. And so I thank you for joining in this look at early intervention, the steps in the process, and what one can expect from early intervention services. And I wish you a good day. Thank you.